What did you say?
Oh, the people take it in because what we found out what was wrong with it. And when they put a new membership in,
Good morning. Ira, when do we stop doing Zoom on the Wednesdays?
John, I don't think it's been determined yet.
Okay.
Joe, did we give you a job? The whole family? Okay. I don't know what they call you. Okay, and that's probably enough. Okay.
Okay, because we were talking about setting up a rotation to open up on Sunday mornings. Yeah, I'll be able to do it. You'll do this Sunday, I'll do next Sunday. Talk more, we were talking about possibly getting Sundays, they're not gonna have school.
Yeah.
So just to have somebody here to open the doors.
Oh,
Okay, that's all right. Okay.
no, I'm not involved.
Okay. I'm gonna have to buy you a new mask.
What?
I have to buy you a new mask.
Nope. You have to fight me for this one.
Good morning.
Get it all.
Morning, Ronnie.
Well, I'm not that brave, Jen.
Morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
Morning, Mike. Morning, John. Morning, John Boy.
Morning.
Morning, everybody.
How are you, Ronnie?
4, 5. So we have physical participants now and a Zoom? Yeah. Good. I got the days mixed up yesterday. I forgot. I thought it was a Zoom.
That's what happened with old age.
Well, after such a trip, you know, you get all the days mixed up. You don't know what's day or night anymore. Anyway, where are your dogs?
Right here and here.
I don't see them.
There you go.
Oh, here. Very comfortable.
Yeah.
What do you give them? Benadryl?
No, just tell them to behave.
The guy leading the service.
You look sleepy.
Let's just say,
You stay up all night.
I'm abnormal here. I'm standing over here.
We got a meeting already. Yeah, but we don't have,
Yeah, he'll be here. He's coming.
What is the big man?
Hey, you okay, man?
Yeah, technology is the word. I spent 10 minutes on there trying to get it to print the dumb sheet.
I'm so sorry.
Just gave up. So we're just gonna do it from my phone.
we'll be all right.
Like, why would it print? 'Cause Windows is
Here
really
comes the
complicated.
rabbi from Lala.
You know, I at some point I was like, let's just do Minyan. We'll learn Talmud. I know. I'm like sitting there yelling at the screens, doing nothing. I was like, all right, where's my sitter? Behind you. Oh, everything else. At least we can count on y'all. Boy, I tell you, somebody doesn't want us to learn about Sodom and Gomorrah later.
Oh.
We'll do it. Yeah, it's probably gonna work when we get back to it. Boker Tov, everybody. Good morning.
Boker Tov.
Sorry about the
Good morning.
delay. My computer hates me. I think it thinks I'm done already. Still another week and a half. So. We're going to get started on page 6 with Birchot HaShachar, blessings for a brand new day, we ask. If you're able, you please rise. Page 6. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sech libin halech min yom v'min hayla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzamo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben Korim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokeh kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roparetz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzarkihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mechim mitzadei gafer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mazir she'abi hurah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mazir she'abi tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam natan li yahiv koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ortnei Rohayim v'choyim lachem l'chesed rachamim b'nech v'nech v'ayinu v'tigleinu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'am Yisrael. You may be seated, page 7. Ashreinu matofel kenu menangor l'mayafa Yerushalayim Ashreinu shalachnu mashkinim arivim erev haboker ve'amim pamayim bechol yom Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Abba kadesh tzimcha maktishrei shmecha v'kadesh tzimcha bo'lemecha v'yishua tatarim v'tagviyah karneinu baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh tzimcha b'rabim atarim
Amen. Atah Adonai Eloheinu b'shamayim u'ba'aretz.
v'v'yah la'am ki adam v'yetam yav'yetam v'shavit shvotechem ne'nechem Adonai. Choose a rabbinic text to study between pages 9 and 12. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel me'ash tashat v'gmor ונמשיך בשערי חיינו נראה שבוע. So, what is Page 12. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו שתיתן חוקינו בתורתך ונהיה מתלמידיו של אהרון הכהן אוהב שלום ורודף שלום אוהב את הבריות וקורבן לתורה. Please rise for Kaddish Rabbanan, page 13. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ויעמד יברא קראתי וימליך מלכותי וחיי כל ימיך וחיי לכל בית ישראל Tagala Uzman Kari Viniru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Ve'olam Ve'olmei Almaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitbar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh. V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei V'kodeshah V'richu. Leila Mikol Birchata V'shirata. Tushbechata V'nechmata. Damiran Ve'alma V'yimiru Amen. Al Yisrael Ve'al Rabbanan Ve'al Talmideon, Ve'al Kol Talmidei Talmideon, Ve'al Kol Ma'an De'oskim Ve'oraita, Dive Ashra, Dave, Dive, Hol, Atar, Liatar. Yehelahon, Lachon, Shlama, Rabba. Stina, Bechista, Rabba, Min, Mechaim, Arifin, Islona, Rebecca. Markana, Min, Kadam, Abuhon, Yishmaya, Vimiru, Amen. Yehi, Shlama, Rabba, Min, Shmaya. Mechaim, Tovim, Aleinu, Ve'omu, Yisrael, V'yimru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Yivracha. Uvracham, Yaseh Shalom. Aleinu ve'alenu Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. You may be seated. Psalm 30, page 14. Mizmor Shir Chanukah Deda Dida Dida. V'miskinei machmolei v'dachtas akivetas v'nisimech למען יזמך וזו ולא ידע אדוני Elohai. Eldam Odeka, Warner Scottish, page 15. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabba. Ve'alma Zivra, Kirtei, Ve'amlecha Tiftutei. V'chayifon, V'yamechon, V'chayit, V'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agalav, V'zman Karim, V'yimeru, Amen.
Amen.
Ve'hei Shmei Rabba, Mevarach, Le'alam, Lamei Amaya. Yitvarach, V'yishtabach, V'yizbahar, V'yitrum, V'yinaseh. Nitadar, Nitaleh, Nitalal, Shmei Kodeshah, Bareinu, Ehela, Mikol, Birkata, Veshirata, Sushkatata, Venechemata, Zamiran, Be'alma, V'yimeru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Mishmaya, V'chaim Aleinu Ve'omu Yisrael V'yimeru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'vrama, V'hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'omu Yisrael V'yimeru, Amen. Please rise, Baruch Shemar, page 16. Baruch Shemar Ve'yam Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu.
Yafei Chayol, Hamim Melech Meshivach, V'dei Shema Gadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Meod, Alma Tishbachot. You may be seated. 17. Odel Adonai, Kiru Bishmachot. Yismach, Hashem. Oh, Asher Karat Avraham. Imad V'gam, Mitzvah, Mitzvah. Shalom. Yikol Eloyam Himedinim Adonai Shemai Matzah Ve'adar Epanav 18. Optikon Tevabatim Asiranim Rohen Adonai Elohim V'Shachvalar Kosho Kikados Adonai Elohim Ve'Horachom Yechaper Avon 19. Adonai tzvot asher lo moteach bach, Adonai Hoshea melech yadeinu ve'yom korneinu, Hoshea et amecha, u'barech et achatecha, orem v'nasem hadavon Hoshea et amecha, u'barech et achatecha, Orem venasem hadam. Vani v'chastecha v'tachti agad v'yishuatecha asher l'Adonai ki gamal alai mizvadeto darden kol haaretz yidu. Shema ki tavanai le'elam chasta v'dor emunato yehi
יהי
chavarnai
חברי ויום ישמח אדוני במסע, וישם אדוני נתח ירמון.
Ve'horachom yachaper b'no lo yashpefer v'lashiv v'lo yerkol chumatzah Adonai Hoshea melech yadeinu ve'yom goreinu Ashrei 21 Ashrei beitecha u'beru v'aseh
פותח את ידיך ומשפיע כל חדשו, צדיק הרב בחודש. הללויה למשיח מים.
Adonai shomer et kerim yatzal me'amanad ederer kashim yavet imlach na'ila melachet zion ador hallelujah.
Hallelujah to Zimahinu Kinabati Ram Yishon.
Oderan hadim Navigat Sasha Shabbat Yerushalayim et Adonai. Magid Rabbi Yaakov, Kukam Mishpat B'nai Yisrael, Asachem B'chol Goyim Mishpatim B'yirav, Hallelujah, Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hashemayim, Hallelujah.
24. Hallelujah, Shmeshman. Hayam B'chol B'himah. Bayar Evim Karen Le'am Botila Lechol Chasida Abdim Yisraelam Kroba Hallelujah
Hallelujah, Shir Shir Chadash, Shir Chasidim.
Eisor Malchechem Bezkim Nekbedechem Mechavlei Barzel Lazot B'mishpat Katu Hadar Lechol Chasida Hallelujah 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 Hallelujah, hallelujah, v'tir shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, v'tir shama. Kol neshama teha, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol neshama teha, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohim Yisrael Nivlad Levad Baruch Shem Kavod Leil Hamdin Echolot Kol Haaretz Amen Ve'amen. Please rise. 26. Vayvad David אתה בונה אלוהים אשר בחרת באברהם ויצאת ומרקסתי וזאת שמו אברהם מצאת לבבו נאמן לפניך וחרתים על הברית על ים ספקת וים פקדת לפני ברגו בתוך ים ביבשה בדורפי משפחת לנסות כמוהם במים עוזים וישע אדוני ביום ההוא וים וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה אשר עשה להם במצרים וירחם את אדוני וימיר באדוני משה עבדו אז ישיר משה בני ישראל אשר עוזי וזמרתיה לחלק שלנו מי כמוך Hashem Adonai Imloch Le'olam Va'em Ki L'Adonai Imloch HaMoshav HaGoyim V'Lo Moshim Ba'atzim L'Shvarech HaRisav V'Yitzal Adonai Hamlocha V'Yad Adonai L'Melech L'Kol Haaretz V'Yom Ha'Hoy Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad 29 Yishtarach Shemach Le'ad Malakeinu Sure. Berachot verachot metaber olam Baruch atah Adonai המלך הגדול ותשבחות אל ההודעות הנפלאות ובכה בשירי זמרה מלך אלפי עולמים יתגדל יתקדש שמי רבה אלעד נברא קירותי וימלך מלכותי וחי חמדים אתמנה וחיי לכל בית ישראל עגלה בזמן קריב ימרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ועולמים Barach, Shabbat, Parish from Ampit Nase, Vitadar vitale vitalash melekudasham brichu. Ve'lachim birchata v'shirchata. Tushbechata v'nechmata. Damirat me'amad imeru amen. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach,
Adonai Amorach Le'Adamai Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Yotzer Or Brech Loshech Osei Shalom Borei Et HaKol. You may be seated. 5 lines down on 30. Hamei Olah Etzel Adonai Melech HaBarachim Into the Echo Yom Havim Restoration. Kedoshim. 31. כולם מלכים, כולם מרורים, כולם גיבורים וכולם עושים מעביר רצון כונם, וכולם פותחים את דין בקדושה וטהרה, שירה וזמרה מברכים שבחים, ודברים המעריצים, מקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול. וכולם מקבלים עליכם המלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש אותו מנחת רוח ושפה ומטרה קדושה, כולם כחרונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, וכל הארץ כתורתו. ואומרים את חייס הקודש, ואשכחם ניסים ומצרפים, לעומתם שבתים ואומרים, ברוך יבא אדוני, ברוך ימות תיתנו למלך. אור חדש על ציון טהיר, ונזכה כולנו מאור לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. 32. ואבינו לשלום ירק ענפות הארץ, וצריכנו כממיר לארצנו, כי על פה ישבות אתה, ובחרתי מכל מלשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול באמת, והודות לך את חוקו באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, הרופא בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על בפיך ושיננת עמדיך ולמועצה בם ושיתך ביתך ובתך ובתרם ובשבתך ובכורך וכששמנך על ידיך והיו בתוניך בעיניך וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
והיה משמעו תשמעו לצבאותי אשר לכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת יציב לכם לקיים בישוע. אמת. ודור קיים ושמו קיים, מכניסה נכון למחותו במנתו לקיים ארץ וארץ חיים הקיימים. נאמנים ראשונים אמת שבתא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גדול גואל אבותינו, Yotzreinu tzarishotenu, parinu matzenu ve'elam shemecha Elohim zoratecha, nechalat avotenu atem ve'olam. Page 35. Tehillat el-Elyon, Baruch HaMorach, Moshe b'nei Yisrael, v'chadu shira b'simcha rabba, v'yamru l'chortam, mi kamocha b'anim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh, Norat tehilot osek chesed, shira chadash, Rashi v'goger l'neshimcha sfatayam, yachad kulam odu v'imrichu v'yameru, Adonai Imlok Le'olam Va'ed. Please rise. Zor Yisrael, Kol Ezrat Yisrael, Uvdei Chinomecha Yehuda Ve'Yisrael, Go'aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael Baruch. Israel. We'll be getting Amidah together on page 36b, continuing through the Kiddush on 37, and then silently the rest of the way through our Amidah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Eloheinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGidol V'Yachonah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'konei Avot Ve'zocher Chatzei Avot U'mevii Gomel Libnei Bnei Leman Shemo V'Yahava Melech Ozer Tzorech Mashiach Tzaddik Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Chokei Tzara Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye V'Tim Ata Rav Hoshia Orid Hatav Mechakel Chayim V'Chesed Mechaye V'Tim Rachamim Rabim Tomech Nochim V'Rofech Olim U'Mazir Asurim V'Mekayem U'Manachal Yishenei Afar V'Chamocha Gvurot V'Idomecha Melech Mebit Menayeh U'Matzliach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Ata L'Chayot Metim Baruch atah Adonai Mekayem Avitim Mekadesh את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום כך כתוב ליד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר
Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh,
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו, לעומתם ברוך ימינו. ברוך אדוני במקומו, דברי קודשך כתוב לאמור. ברוך אדוני לאלוהים מלך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד קודך, נצח נצחים קדושתך נטיש, ושבחך אלוהינו וקינו לו יום הושתה למועד. כי המלך הגדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Complete healing of body and soul. And wash it down with every mental and all what is restricted. He spent to those who come to him who have faith in us for God of their own faith. Support him with these kinds of instructions on the satisfies.
you're still praying the Amidah, feel free to continue. Otherwise, we continue with short talk and then beginning on page 62. Oh. Ozrein, Ohish, in Adavak, Mochmech, Latina, Vachaper, Afatina, Manshmech. Please rise, page 64, Hatzi Kaddish. Yitzgat, Yitzgat, Shemir, Rava, Behal, Mandivra, Kirutevia, Lichmalchute. V'chayim chonu b'mechonu v'chayim chonu Yisrael, B'galav Izman Karbi V'miru, Amen. Yesh Me'rava Me'vorcha, Olam Olam Ve'omaycha. Yitbarach V'yishmach V'yitbar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadam V'yitalev V'yitalav Shmeri Kudusha B'richu. Ve'emhamin Kol V'yachata V'shirata, Tushmechata V'nechmata, Damiran Be'alma V'yimiru, Amen. You may be seated. Ashrei is found on page 78. Ve'hi Adonai Be'ti V'varech V'masreshim Kol Shalom Ba'ed V'anachnu V'arech V'yaviyat V'erot Ha'malaya V'tzech Mizmor V'yaviyat Ve'makra V'nachnu Kamnu V'nito Adonai Hashem Melech Yadeinu V'yom Gordeinu Uvad Hetzion Kol Shavei Fesha, page 80. Anizot Ritziyotan. Ve'hatakadosh Shati Israel Ve'karzel Ze'v'yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot Melech Ha'aretz V'yavodo. V'tisa Ein Rav Machorei Korash Gadol Baruch Kavod Adonai V'nekomo Adonai Yimach Le'olam Va'ed Adonai Malchut HaKadosh. Okay, Shomer. Achanu. Korech HaTzipat HaTzedek Le'olam. Baruch. Baruch. Vayivtech v'vechayarei shemecha ki lo zatarosh acharona al ma'chafetz aman tzidko yagdil Torah ve'yadir. Please rise for Kaddish Shalom, page 82. Yitzgat Hashemer Torah ve'al ha'tivra kirutei v'yamlik malchutei v'chayim chonu v'mechonu v'chayim chomit Yisrael b'galav v'zman karbi v'miru, Amen. Yesh me'rava me'vorcha ve'olam olam ve'olaycha. Yibarach v'yishmach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadach v'yitalev v'yitalav shmei kodesha b'richu. Ve'emhamin kol v'chata v'shirata, Tushkachata V'nechmata Dami Pan Me'alma V'miru, Amen. Yitzgat Vatzla Tanavat Tom Defo Yisrael Kadam V'moni V'shmaya V'miru, Amen. Yehesh Lamarava V'shmaya Chaim Aleinu V'Achol Yisrael V'miru, Amen. Mahosei Shalom V'Mracha Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'Amo Yisrael V'Meru Amen. Aleinu Leshabbeach Ve'Lon HaKol Asher Tivra El Te'eshti Ve'Mosanu Kigoyei HaRatzot Ve'Lohosonanu Kishmechot Adama Shenosam Elokeinu Gahem Ve'Gomor Yareinu B'Kol Hamonam V'Anachnu Korbi Mishtachavim V'Ifnei Melech Malkei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Katuv b'Toratecha Adonai Yimloch leotahem ba'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai melech al ha'aretz hayom hahu yeheh Adonai echad u'shemo Oshemo Echad, Oshemo Echad. Warner Scottish, page 84. Yitkata v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'olamad yivrak kirutei ve'amlik malchutei, v'chayimon u'vyom echon u'v'chayed echol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman kariv v'imiru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalach shmei tekudisha breakthrough le'ela min kol yirmata v'shirata tushkachata v'nechemata v'amiram v'almam v'yimiru amen. Yehi shlama rabba v'yishmaya V'chayim aleinu melchol Yisrael v'yimiru amen. Oseh shalom yivromav, u'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'chol Yisrael v'yimiru amen. Maybe see it if you'd like. A song for Wednesday, bottom of page 87. Ayom Revi'i v'Shabbat. Yinaseh shofet ha'aretz. Nachatan. Yaakov. Yinabari. Hello, Yofniach. Ashrei, give Ashrei, please, right? Ashki, love me. Lechon heranen ad Adonai, Ariel etzor hishenu, nekad mafana betota adisnira nariado, ki el gadol Adonai, umelech gadol al kol Elohim. We continue to send our condolences to the family during the Shiva period of Dorothy Rebecca Liu, as well as the families during the Shloshim periods of Lisa Starr Rosenstein, Miriam Schlosky, Margaret Peg O'Neill, Jerry Friedman, and Arthur Hartstein. If you have additional names to add, hold on. And Yortzites this morning, also we remember the Yortzite of Donald Kurtman. Now, if you have additional names to add, feel free to do so at this time. Final Mourner Scottish is found back on page 84. Yitzgadal v'yitzgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'almad yivrach kirutei ve'amlik malchutei, v'chayimon u'vyom echon u'v'chayed echol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman kariv v'yimiru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam v'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalach shmei tekudisha brechu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Yehi Shlama Rabba Mitzraya. V'chaim Aleinu Ve'okol Yisrael V'imiru. Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mracha. V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'okol Yisrael V'imiru. Amen. Boker Tov, everybody. Good morning. I apologize for the delay, but we made up for it. The sheets wouldn't print, but they will soon. I'm going to go try to make it happen in a couple of minutes, and then we'll start Talmud. Announcement-wise, tomorrow evening is Thursday. There's a sustainability event. Dr. Ozer can tell you more if you'd like to know. So that'd be great if you can attend that on the Zoom. I think it's 7. I think that's right. But Dr. Ozer can give you the details right now. Otherwise, feel free to stick with us if you'd like for a little Talmud study. We're going to be studying Sodom and Gomorrah. If you want to go, you can definitely go, and we wish you a beautiful day. Good morning, Boker Tov.
Okay. Have a great day.
The event for tomorrow night is on opportunities and challenges in environmental sustainability. It's the last event for this year's programming that we've been focusing on, recycling and environmental sustainability. We have a great panel, including Jordan Vexler from Monterey Iron and Metal, Maeve Bassett from the San Antonio Botanical Gardens, Brendan Gibbons from the San Antonio Report, who's the environmental reporter there, and our own Rabbi Ben Richards for the Jewish perspective. So please join us at 7 p.m. Central Time.
Thank you.
I have sent some of you a reminder with the Zoom link. The synagogue sent the reminder yesterday. Morning, Bob.
Morning.
I'm sure he does too.
Is Hannah still here?
She's downstairs, but you could go down there. Ben?
Yeah.
She's on the Stairmaster, I think.
All right, sorry about that. And of course, it printed not double-sided because technology is.
Thank you.
Don't ask me to operate any heavy machinery today.
Oh, you did great, Rabbi. Thank you.
It's going to go poorly. Anyhow, maybe it's a sign of what we're studying. So, what we're studying, you can find it on the Google link on the Facebook page. But we're going to be looking at Sodom. The reason why we're studying Sodom is it's another one of these categories of people who have no share in the world to come. So we're detailing all the people who aren't worthy of getting good after everything has happened. You might say to yourself, why? The answer probably is because when you're defining good, you also have to define evil, and therefore they're the people who don't make the cut. So last week we did the generation of the flood. They were no good. Noah was saved. The rest were not saved because they sucked. So right after that generation comes these people of Sodom. We know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham argues with God, save this place. God's like, no, it's evil. Abraham's like, there's got to be a certain number of righteous people there. And God's like, if there are 10 righteous people, they finally bargain down to 10. God will save it. Turns out there aren't 10 righteous people. So it's a great example of a place that really doesn't have anything good about it. And we can figure out what about it was so bad. How can we use it as an example for wickedness? and therefore why those people don't get the world to come. Because again, we're in Sanhedrin, we're making judgments about these sorts of things. Yeah, okay. So, here we go. Sanhedrin 108b. The people of Sodom have no share in the world to come, like I said. The sages taught the people of Sodom have no share in the world to come. How do we know that? It's stated in Genesis 13:13. The men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Right? How do we know they were wicked? Because it says they were wicked. They were really, really wicked before God. Wicked indicates in this world, so they did bad stuff in this world, and sinners for the world to come. Right? So they were bad here, they're bad there. They're not going to get the world to come because they're really wicked. They're doubly wicked. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Wicked, the first part refers to the sins they did with their bodies. So probably sexual sins, maybe violent sins. And then sinners refers to sins they commit with their money. And there's this thing about Sodom having money, we're going to see. So sins they did with their money versus sins they did with their body, themselves versus their property. The sages taught the people of Sodom became haughty and sinned due only to the excessive goodness that the Holy One, blessed be God, bestowed upon them. So it turns out Sodom actually, the people were okay, maybe, and then God gave them blessings, so they became wicked. Does that make sense? Like you think to yourself, no, that doesn't make sense, but look at how it worked out, okay? What is written concerning them? As for the earth, out of it comes bread, and underneath it, turned up as it were by fire. Its stones are the place of sapphires, and it has dust of gold. That path no bird of prey knows, neither has the falcon's eye seen it, the proud beasts have not trodden it, nor has the lion passed thereby. So they're going to explain, what does this mean? This is talking about, this is from Job, really weird verse. This is talking about the land of Sodom. So God gave it blessings so that the ground had dust of gold, it had stones made out of sapphires, right? The literal ground they lived on was exceedingly rich, like literally rich, like gold and silver and things like that. So the people of Sodom had this really blessed land. So they said, since we live in a land from which the bread comes and has the dust of gold, they got gold dust bread, we have everything we need. Why should we have travelers? Travelers just come to take from us, right? Travelers will come and take our gold. We don't need travelers. Let us cause the proper treatment of travelers to be forgotten from our land. Let's get rid of the laws of hospitality. As it's stated, he breaks open a water course in a place far from inhabitants, forgotten by pedestrians. They're dried up. They have moved away from men, right? So this is what happened. It's brilliant. If you look at the verse, this is the verse that comes right before. So if you just saw Job 28:5-8, Job 28:4, the verse right before, basically, it's like a cause and effect. It's out of order, but Midrash, it's okay that you can do these things out of time. Basically what happens is God blesses the people of Sodom with this amazing land full of gold and riches. You're like farming, and then boom, gold. You're farming, boom, silver, right? So you would think to yourself, the people would say, thank you, God. No, what do the people do? They get selfish and greedy, and they say, great, we have the gold. Other people are going to come and try to take the gold. No, sir. Let's forget how to be hospitable, because that way we won't have any travelers. We won't have to give them our gold, and we'll be rich forever. Right? So this is what happened. They say forget it. And the verse, you can tell, the verse says in 28:4, forgotten by pedestrians. So they want their land to become forgotten by people traveling around. Why? So that people don't take their stuff. Right? Stay away. They put up a big fence. Don't come in. Okay, so this is the wickedness of Sodom. They're blessed, and they take the blessing, and they say it's all ours. Rabbah taught, what is the meaning of this verse in Psalms? How long will you seek to overwhelm a man? You will all be murdered like a leaning wall or a tottering fence. This teaches that the people of Sodom set their sight on property owners. They would take a property owner and put him next to an inclined, flimsy wall that's about to fall, and then they would push the wall onto the guy and kill him, and then they would take his property. Right? They're so greedy, the people of Sodom, that they set up situations in which they can get more property. They're constantly trying to take other people's property, probably each other's property. So they say, hey, Phil, They say, hey, Phil, we know that you just got a nice mansion, and we just wanted to take you out for a nice hike. Here, come stand over here, Phil, underneath this big thing of boulders. And then, oh, sure, yeah, very nice. And then, whoops, and then, oh, Phil was crushed to death. We'll have to take his property, right? So this is how greedy these people are. We can see they sinned with their money. How did they sin with their money? They're obsessed with property. So then Rabbah also taught, what is the meaning of this verse in Job? In the dark, they dig through houses. By day, they shut themselves up. they know not the light. Another Job verse. He teaches that the people of Sodom would set their sights on property owners. Again, they want wealth. They would take a property owner and they would give him balsam, right? This smelly substance, right? And the property owner would put it in his treasury. So they give him, let's imagine something, vanilla, right? They give him, oh yeah, vanilla, smells so good. So they give him vanilla, and he puts it in his treasury because, he puts it in his house. Oh, thanks for the spice, okay? But it smells a lot. So in the evening, the people of Sodom would come and sniff it out like a dog, right? They're like, okay, now we know where the vanilla is, and they would follow the vanilla, and then they would know where the guy's treasury was, right? So they would get to the treasury. As it stated, they return at evening, they howl like a dog, and they go round about the city. After they discovered where his treasury was, they would dig and they would take the property. So even the things that seem like they're being nice, they're not being nice. They're actually setting up another situation which they can steal your stuff. Right, it's like if I gave you, if you had, nowadays, if you had some kind of, if I put like a camera on a piece of money and I gave you the money and you said, thanks so much for the money. And I was like, yeah. But really that money is just so I can figure out where all the rest of your money is and then I can take it. So they're just greedy people. How else are they greedy? The people of Sodom would say, anybody who has one ox shall herd the city's oxen for 1 day. But anybody who does not have any oxen shall herd the city's oxen for 2 days. So now this is just a perversion of justice, right? Is it property-based? Sort of. But here they're not stealing people's stuff. They're stealing people's time here. So if you own oxen, then if you have one, you do 1 day of herding everybody's oxen. If you have none, you have to do 2 days. Does that sound fair to you? That doesn't sound fair to me. That's like saying if you have a kid, you have to watch everybody's kids for 1 day, but if you have no kids, you have to watch them for 2 days. I don't have any kids. Why is it my responsibility? Right? But here they're saying that's what they do. The Gemara relates they gave oxen to a certain orphan to herd. He's the son of a widow. This is also, by the way, if you want to see how bad they are, who are they picking on? They pick on the poor, they pick on the widow, the orphan, the neglected. And Judaism hates that, right? We protect the widow, the orphan, etc. So Sodom's very evil because they pick on the have-nots of society. So here, he's the son of a widow, he's an orphan. They say, you go and herd all the cattle. So he went and took all the cattle they gave him and killed them, right? So he's like, I don't want to do this. So he kills all the cattle. And the orphan said to the people of Sodom, let anybody who has one ox take 1 hide. Let anybody who does not have an ox take 2 hides, right? Because that's the rule. If you have oxen, you have to herd for 1 day. But if you don't have oxen, you have to herd for 2 days. So when the oxen die, if you had oxen, you should get 1. But if you didn't have oxen, you should get double. So the people of Sodom said, well, that doesn't make any sense. What is the reason for this ruling you just said? I don't know why they're listening to him. He just killed all their oxen. The orphan said to them, the ultimate rule is parallel to your rule. Just as your rule said, one who has 1 ox herds the city's animals for 1 day. Anybody who doesn't have any herds for 2. So too the ultimate rule should be anybody who has 1 ox takes 1 hide. Anybody who does not have an ox takes 2 hides, right? So what has he done here? He's shown how stupid their rule is, right? He's making fun of them. This is one of the trickster stories. We're going to see more of them with Eliezer, Abraham's servant. The people of Sodom are wicked, and yet that makes them ample opportunity, like they are really a great opportunity to trick them and show how smart the have-not is, to show how smart the Jew is, to show how smart the righteous person is, depending on the story. There are lots of these stories where the people of Sodom are wicked, and somebody else says, actually, here's how you could do it, and makes fun of them. So here, they're being made fun of. Do you really think an orphan was allowed to slay all their oxen and prove a point? No, they would have killed him, right? That never would have happened. But it's a nice story. Furthermore, they declared in Sodom, let one who crosses on a ferry give 1 dinar, 1 coin as payment. Let one who does not cross on a ferry, if you walk in the river, you have to give double. That doesn't make any sense, right? If you use public transportation, you pay 1, but if you walk on your own, you pay twice as much. In addition, when there was anyone who had a row of bricks, each and every one of the people of Sodom could come and take a brick and say, I'm just taking 1, it's not a big deal, until none remained, right? So they're jerks. They're sneaky jerks. And they steal your property, and they trick you, and they pervert justice, and they're bad. They're really bad, right? But how do they do it? It's not in overt ways. They don't say, they don't go up and murder you. They put you underneath the fence, and they push it over on you. They don't take all your bricks at once, everybody comes and takes just one brick. It's no big deal, but in doing so, the same result is reached, right? Or if there was anyone who was casting onions or garlic to dry, each and every one of the people of Sodom would come and take one and say, I just took one onion, right? You had 100 chips, you could spare a chip for me, but then 100 people come and then you have no chips, right? Crummy. There were 4 judges in Sodom, and they were named for their actions. This is playing on words, right? So shakrai, shakran, right? A sheker is a lie. So there was shakrai. Then there's shakrurai, who's habitual liar. So there's liar is the guy's name, and he's a judge. There's habitual liar. There's zaphai, he's a forger. And there's matzle dina, perverter of justice. Can you imagine? The judge says, all rise for the honorable judge liar, right? You'd be like, I don't really want him judging my case today. So this is sort of, they're again playing with them. Do you really think Sodom had these guys? I don't know, I wasn't there, I doubt it. But they're making a point, right? So these are the 4 crummy guys who were their judges. In the case of one who strikes the wife of another and causes her to miscarry, they would say to the woman's husband, give your wife to the one who struck her, and then she will be impregnated for you again, right? So perversion of justice. If somebody causes a woman to miscarry, you say, oh, you caused her to miscarry, you have to fix the wrong, so you go sleep with my wife, right? That doesn't make any sense unless you're in Sodom, right? And the same here. In the case of one who severed the ear of another's donkey, so for some reason you cut off somebody's donkey's ear, they would say to the donkey owner, give your donkey to the one who did the damage until the ear grows back. Is the ear ever going to grow back? No, probably not, right? So it doesn't make any sense. It sounds like some form of justice, right? Like if you just read it and you didn't look into it, you'd say, well, it is a judgment. There seems to be some sort of logic to it, but the logic is all backwards. Basically, if you cause harm, you're rewarded, sort of. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? This is the kind of bad stuff that was going on there. And if somebody wounded another guy, they would say to the injured party, right? So I punch Phil in the face, and he starts bleeding all over. And so then they would say to Phil, you have to give Rabbi Ben money because he let your blood, right? I'm a bloodletter. I punched him in the face. You're welcome, right? That was a free service. Well, I don't work for free. Back in the day, if you're going to let somebody's blood, you got to pay him for it. So give me some money, Phil. The punches don't come free, okay? So this is like all perverted justice all over the place. And another thing, one who crossed the river on a ferry gave 4 dinars. See, the funny thing here is, like, didn't we just say if you cross the river, 1 dinar? But see, these are all these stories really literal, or are they making a point? I think they're making a point. I don't know, they're like, oh, was the one true and the other one false? No, probably not. One who crossed the river on a ferry gives 4 dinars. One who crossed the river in the water gives 8 dinars. So you give double again. One time there was a launderer who came, and he arrived there. And they said to him, give 4 dinars to pay for the ferry. And he said, I crossed in the water, thinking probably I don't have to pay that much. So they said, then you have to give 8 dinars because you went in the water. So he didn't give them the dinars because that's ridiculous. And he says, this is ridiculous, right? So they punched him and wounded him. So he went before the judge and he said, they punched me, they need to pay me. And the judge said to him, you need to pay them because they let your blood. And you need to pay 8 dinars because you went in the water. So he goes before the judge thinking, I've been wronged. Judges exist to do justice. He gets to the judge, and what's the judge say? Well, it's this sodomite judge. So he says, not only are you in the wrong, but you owe additional money because they let your blood, and you need to pay them for that, and you crossed in the river, and you need to pay them for that. So actually, the justice system here is so messed up that he'd be better off just not going to ask at all, right? Justice usually is supposed to be done to protect those who are harmed. But here, he's harmed and justice says, great, and you should pay penalties because you were harmed, because they've changed the whole system around and they're acting like he benefited, which it's ridiculous, right? We can see why Sodom, if this is the way it was, God would have wanted to overthrow it because it's the antithesis of what God wants in the world. So, here we go. This is great. Okay, so one time Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, happened to come there. We know of Eliezer, right? So Eliezer is Abraham's servant. He testifies before him. He's going to get Abraham's son Isaac a wife. Eliezer, in some stories, is Jewish. In some stories, he's not Jewish. In some stories, he's really great. In some stories, he's not great. In these stories, he's a trickster, a good trickster. So Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, happened to come there. He comes to Sodom, and they wounded him. So I don't know, they punched him, I guess. He came before a judge to seek compensation. The judge said, give a fee to the person who let your blood. Same thing, right? So somebody hits him. He goes to the judge. He says, all right, this guy hit me. You should charge him. And the judge says, no, we should charge you because he let your blood. So what does Eliezer do?
That's good.
So he took a stone and he hit the judge. And the judge said, what are you doing? You can't hit me. I'm a judge. And Eliezer said, the fee that I was supposed to pay, the fee that you're supposed to pay to me, you can give it to the guy who wounded me, and my money will stay where it is, right? He's making fun of him. Because basically, in their court system or whatever, their idea of justice is if you hurt somebody, they owe you money because you're letting their blood. And so what did Eliezer do? He let the judge's blood. If they're going to make him pay because somebody else wounded him, then he's going to wound someone else and say, you know what, this is ridiculous, right? The judge didn't like it at all, but this is what happens when you have corrupt justice. It doesn't do anybody any favors. So Eliezer says, I'm not paying a dime. You can pay him because I let your blood, he let my blood, and you guys owe each other. I don't know anything. I'm out of here, right? So now here's another version. They had beds on which they would lay their guests. When a guest was longer than the bed, they would cut him, and when a guest was shorter than the bed, they would stretch him. By the way, if this sounds familiar, it should. This is not a Jewish story initially, right? This is a story from another culture, maybe a Greek one, and we might recognize a number of these stories in various versions, right? So this is the bed that, I forget what it's called, but you can look it up. It's the bed that, like, if you're too long, they cut you. If you're too short, they stretch you till you break. So they have that bed. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, happened to come there, right? So he just shows up in Sodom one day again. They said to him, come lie on the bed, right? So they're going to chop him or they're going to stretch him. I don't know if he's tall or short. He said to them, I took a vow. Since the day my mom died, I don't lie on beds, right? So he's smarter than that. He knows. He can see what's going to happen, and he's able to trick them again, right? He's the clever trickster. He says, oh, no, I hate beds. I like couches, right? So, saved. When a poor person would happen to come to Sodom, each and every person would give him a dinar, and they would write their name on the dinar that they gave, but they wouldn't give anybody or sell anybody any bread. So the guy couldn't spend any of the dinars in Sodom, right? They don't give anything to outsiders ever. And so then the guy, after a while, what would he do? He'd starve to death, so he would die. And then everybody would come back and take their dinar back. Why do they write their names on it? So they can get it back, right? Like this dinar says Joel, and so then Joel comes back and he says, oh, I'm taking back my money again, and he can just keep doing it, right? They give tzedakah, but it's a perversion of tzedakah, because ultimately it's lacking all righteousness, right? What good does money do somebody if you won't let them ever spend it, and you allow them to starve to death instead of letting them buy food, right? So here it seems they have the illusion, again, they're tricksters, it's the illusion of being a good society, a just society, but they're the antithesis of one because everything that's set out to be good actually has been flipped. And everything that would be great, they've outlawed. So you can't even use the money for anything righteous, and yet they have this idea that, of course, we always give tzedakah to wayfarers, they just can't ever use the tzedakah for anything. I wonder what would happen if they left the town to spend the dinars, but we don't know. All right, and then here, just a few more. This is what the people of Sodom stipulated amongst themselves. Whoever invites a man to a wedding, his cloak will be removed, right? So they take your cloak when you come to a wedding. This is not great. There was, not removed like taken off, like stolen from him, right? There was this wedding, and Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, showed up. He just keeps showing up in Sodom. You think he would know better. So he arrived there, and they wouldn't give him bread. So when he wanted to dine, he came and sat at the end, behind everyone. So they said to him, who invited you here, right? So who invited you to the wedding? Because they're going to lose their cloak. So he said to the guy who's sitting next to him, this guy invited me. And that guy said, oh no, perhaps they'll hear that I invited him and they'll take my cloak, right? So you don't want to be the guy who invited somebody to your party because people can take your stuff then. So the guy is like, oh no, they're going to think that. So what did he do? So he ran. He's like, oh no, they're going to take my cloak. Even though I didn't invite Eliezer, who's going to believe me? They're going to try to take my stuff, so I'm out of here. So he ran. So Eliezer kept doing that, and he was like, oh wait, it wasn't him who invited me, it was him. No, it was him, it was him. Everybody leaves, and then Eliezer just ate the meal all by himself, right? Ridiculous. Again, he's a trickster. He fools them. their law is all unjust, and yet the guy who knows how justice works, etc., no mistake that it's Abraham's servant, right? The world is not righteous. Abraham is like the righteous guy, and his servant knows what righteousness is, and he's clever enough to trick their corrupt system. So he eats the meal by himself. And then finally, this is a really interesting one that you can find in other sections. They're very short on it here. There are other versions that are longer. And this is based on the verse itself in Genesis 18:20, where it says, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, right? So it's great. There was a young woman who would take bread out to the poor people in a pitcher. This version's missing some parts, so I'll fill it in for you. There's a young woman who would take bread out to the poor people in a pitcher. Why would she put it in a pitcher? Because you're not allowed to feed people in Sodom if they're a traveler or poor, because they're jerks in Sodom, right? So, of course, their laws say if you feed the poor, you're evil and should be killed. So, this woman had a heart, and she would take food out to them, but she'd keep it in a pitcher so nobody would see what she was doing. And so she would get food there. And in another version of this, there's a poor man who is going to die, and then he doesn't die. And they say to themselves, he's supposed to die of starvation any day now, but every day he's still alive. So they find out she's going out to him with a pitcher and giving him flour, or in this case, bread, right? And she's giving it to him, and they find out. So what are they going to do? They're going to kill her because this is unjust in their society where wayfarers should be punished, definitely not sustained. So in our mind, she's doing tzedakah, justice, chasadim, but in their mind, everything is flipped. So what she's doing is sinning. She is helping the wayfarer. This is the last thing they want, because then people are going to stick around and take their stuff. So they found out about it, and they grabbed her, and they put honey all around her, and they put her on the wall, and the hornets came and consumed her. Would this really happen if you put honey on somebody and stuck them on a wall? Would bees eat them? I don't know, but it's a really, really interesting and cruel image, right? This is a torturous way to die, I'm sure. So they put her on the wall, the bees eat her. And that is what is written. See, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great. That's what God says. God says, oh, the cry is just terrible. But look at the word, great Rabbah, like Midrash Rabbah, the great Midrash, right? So Rabbah. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Rabbah is an allusion. The word sounds like the word Riva, which is a young woman. So if you change it, instead of saying the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, you say the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is that of the young woman, right? Or if you flip the language, the young woman's cry in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And that's what God heard. God said, that's it. This is the last straw. This is when God goes down to, right? And to see how bad they are and whatever. And God says, oh, so God hears the young woman crying out because she's being eaten to death by bees. Horrible. And God says, that's it. They have hit the limit. I gave them blessing, and they've turned it into curse time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. And this is the last straw. Look, again, who is this? Is this an important person in society? No, it's a young woman, right? Of all the unimportant people, this is a very unimportant person in society. Because a young woman, what rights does she have? Where's her importance, right? She's not an adult. She's not a male. And so she's a nobody, and society is supposed to protect her, and yet what are they doing? They're doing the opposite. They're oppressing their orphans, their strangers, etc., and those who give money to the poor. And so God says, that's it. It's done. And what's funny about this text is after you read this, I always, as a kid, was like, yeah, why does God get so mad and destroy Sodom? Like, Abraham tries to save it and stuff. When you read this, whether or not this is accurate, you say to yourself, like, I could understand how God could say, this can't exist in a world where I have justice, right? This is the antithesis of justice. And when this kind of mentality spreads, it ensures that you can't have the world that God wants to have, right? It's either an Abraham Eliezer world or it's a Sodom and Gomorrah world. And the amazing thing about it when you read this text is that then you bring back in the story of Abraham advocating for them, and you say to yourself, either is he ridiculous, or you say, look at the power of compassion. Abraham cares about people so much that he maybe even knows about this perversion of justice and says to himself, even they deserve a chance at tshuva. Even they should have a chance to fix their deeds. Not that he wants them to keep doing this, but it's really crazy. I mean, if you look at the text itself, I would say, realistically, is this how you're supposed to read the story? I don't know. When you're reading in the Bible, if you read all of these things into it, it makes you say something very different. You say like, oh, they should have been wiped out a long time ago, maybe. But it's funny because you might think to yourself, like, what is the sin of Sodom? A lot of the time, a lot of us think, what is it? It's a sexual sin based on a couple of things. One is the idea of sodomy, but two, that comes from the idea that when Lot and his daughters are in town and the angels come, all the men come to the door and whatever and say, let us have our way with your travelers. And we know that they like to mistreat travelers, maybe, but we don't think of it mostly wealth sins, right? Financial sins. There's a lot of this, and also just injustice in general. But almost none of these are sexual sins. There are a lot of other horrible things. People are cruel, very, very cruel, but in different ways than we might anticipate. And so the last thing I would just say about this is, again, Talmud is so great, and it can make the text very rich. But also in the case of this, it brings up other issues that make us say to ourselves, like, what is justice and what is a facade of justice, right? What's the difference between a system that says we advocate for the rights of people and we advocate for the rights of ourselves but not others, right? And in this case, like, they have a system of justice. It's just all wrong. And that's why God says, you know, there are a lot of people who sin but ultimately can fix their sins. But in the case of the people of Sodom, they can't. I think at the end of the day, this is a system that comes into so much conflict with what God thinks justice and goodness are, right? It's a system that instead of taking care of the have-nots, it oppresses specifically the have-nots. It's a system that instead of making sure possession is shared among others, it's a system that ensures that nobody shares anything, everybody takes advantage of each other, and it's the kind of world that ultimately can't exist, right? God says, like, if that's how you want to be, you're not going to be for very long. And so I've always loved this text because it's fun. Also, the trickster stories. We're not the first culture or religion or anything with trickster stories. You can find them all over the place. It's fun to see them. Usually the rabbis are the character in a trickster story. Here, Eliezer is a main character, also that orphan earlier, right? It's fun. We like these stories. You say to yourself, that's so ridiculous, right? A lot of these were really funny. Like, they're ridiculous, but also a lot of them are funny. But then there's also ones that are poignant. The idea of the young woman just trying to do a good deed, and they say, you are doing the worst thing possible. Like, look at how upside down their justice system is. The last thing I'll say is in a Masechet like Sanhedrin, where we're trying to define what good justice is, a text like this is necessary because it shows us what good justice is definitely not, that even our people are capable of it, or our people, I don't know, Sodom, I don't know, people 2,000 years ago are capable of it. I'm sure they're living in a time when the Talmud is being discussed, written, etc., where they're seeing some of this kind of hypocrisy and justice, especially in the systems that are not, I mean, maybe the Jewish system, but especially in the secular systems around them, and they're saying, this is so messed up, these guys are like those guys, right? It's a way of criticizing the system they're living in now, etc. as well. So there's a lot of stuff there. Would love to hear y'all's thoughts on any of this. Did we find it relevant, disturbing, etc.? So yeah, I have 4 people in the room besides me. I have, I don't know, 5 on the screen. Anybody who wants to say something, just raise your hand and I'll call your name. Huh.
I'll say something.
Okay, great. Phil, say something. Can y'all see him? Oh yeah.
So, I guess 2 things come to my mind. I like the story about Eliezer when he takes a stone and hits the judge. I think that's awesome. Yeah, but it's also, to me, showing Eliezer as a representative righteous, saying, hey, your justice is all perverted. I'm going to strike you, the judge, because obviously it's bad, and as far as the trickster. But it brings to mind one of the tracts in our study when we go to pages 9 to 12 in the morning and do our study. One of the passages is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel taught that the world rests on 3 principles, on justice, on truth, and on peace. And the 3 are intertwined. When justice is done, truth is served, and peace ensues. So clearly, this is not justice, because the truth is not done, and certainly there's no peace.
Great. Thanks for that, Phil. Appreciate that. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Bob?
Wait, am I? Yeah. Well, I'm just impressed by how crummy these people are, because they're the corruption of the flesh, is so it goes all the way through, so that all of their business dealings, all of their the ethical attributes of a society about taking care of the stranger and everything, it's just complete complete corruption of the individual, so that you get this sense that the only justice is that they not be allowed in the world to come. And then Abraham contesting that, I think, is kind of a statement of his decency.
Great. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Mike?
Well, I think that I love the way the Talmud, also love the way the Talmud treats this as tricksters and uses this, because, so much of, what we see today is, and I think people will have a chance to discuss this in tomorrow evening's Zoom seminar on environmental sustainability, is, what is the issue, the reporter, the environmental reporter, when asked in the preview session, when I had a talk with him, what's the problem? It's fake news. So people in the society that you would normally trust have alternative facts that they want you to believe, that there's no such thing as climate change, and there's no such thing as this fact is wrong, and so you are taken advantage of, in a sense. And the people that are most taken advantage, of course, or I don't mean to be political, are people that don't have, or people that are poor, or people that don't know how to fend for themselves. And so I think Sanhedrin here is yes, these people were certainly evil, but the point that they're trying to make is, you can be, it's easy to deceive people, and in order to continue to enrich yourselves in some way.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything? No pressure. All right. So next week, just a heads up, next week is the last week that we'll be doing this. We're going to be finishing the Masechet. We'll read a little bit of the very end, and then we'll do a siyum. And if you'd like, you can bring a little nosh, a little something to drink or eat. It'd be fun. We'll celebrate. Y'all have been with me through all of this. We've done a lot of work. We'll do a little summarizing. If you want to come with one short statement, any and all of you are welcome to share next week. Something that you've learned from Sanhedrin, something you have a question about, something that bothered you. Any of those things are fine. We'll kind of spend one more time together.